MoneyFM89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Welcome to Morning Shot. Amazon is waving goodbye to remote work. From January next year, its corporate employees must go into the office 5 days a week. In a memo to staff, Amazon's chief executive, Andy Jassy, said that it would help employees be, quote, better set up to invent, collaborate, and be connected enough to each other. Amazon's push to get corporate staff back into the office has been a source of tension within the firm, which saw staff at its Seattle headquarters stage a protest last year as the company tightened the full remote work allowance that was put in place during the pandemic. Amazon subsequently fired the organizer of the protest, prompting claims of unfair retaliation, a dispute that has been taken up with labor officials. So has your perspective of working from home changed pre versus post-pandemic? And has that mode of work changed your relationships with your colleagues? Well, for more insights from a psychological perspective, we're joined by Dr. Shawn Ee. He is a clinical psychologist and psychoanalytic psychotherapist and also the director of the psychology practice. Dr. Shawn, good morning.
Morning, Emaad. It's good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you back on the show. Let's first talk about physical touch points with colleagues. How important is that from a psychological perspective, especially when it comes to innovation and collaboration, as mentioned by Amazon's chief executive, Andy Jassy?
I think by itself, physical touch points with colleagues, especially with close and harmonious relationships, can actually be quite invigorating. And as we can already foster a sense of togetherness. Psychologically, I think it's great to sit with and be able to lunch with your colleagues and catch up and be able to work closely like before. However, if you're returning to a psychologically unsafe workplace and have difficulties with colleagues or managers, and maybe the work itself, it can actually be quite challenging.
Yeah, absolutely, it can be. Amazon's stance has contrasted with the UK government's approach, which has promised to make flexible working a default right from day one as part of a new employment rights bill, which is due to be published next month. Now, from the point of work-life balance, is there one approach that's better than the other? If not, Dr. Shawn, how do we determine what the right balance is?
This is a big question, and let's unpack a little bit. Let's think about this, right? So the one view here is that, we've heard down, as news has reported, that they're trying to run the company as a big startup, right? And, and wanting to work shoulder to shoulder to solve the issues was quoted as part of that approach. The other approach, which contrasts to that, would be, initiatives to back employee rights. But there's no right or wrong here. But if we think about considering work-life balance, I think it's actually part of implementation, right? So with clear policies that would operationalize, perhaps also a systematic rollout that helps everyone in the company feel like, okay, this is not a sudden thing. We need to start listening to concerns better at staff at all levels. And perhaps even, relook staff benefits, right, when thinking about work-life balance. Yep. And it's not just about money, but facilities at the office, flexible start and end times. So the important thing here, I think, is it takes the guesswork out because, we don't want people to start suspecting intentions, or even if it's well-intentioned. For example, people might suspect, they want to do unplanned layoffs and things like that. So I think, right, the possible mechanism here is that we don't have a sufficiently informed appreciation of the company's concerns running a ship of that magnitude. So we may start to make some assumptions on our sides, right? While there's no right way, I think there's also clear evidence, right, that supports providing employees with a degree of control over their work environments, including a sense of autonomy. Actually, it's been shown in much research, right, that increases motivation and performance, which can directly impact an organization's bottom line.
Yeah, well, maybe a bit of trial and error or experimentation when it comes to setting the right conditions in a remote working environment would perhaps help as well. Let's hark our minds back to what is the biggest black swan event of this millennium. So when COVID-19 hit and companies started getting employees to work from home, workers around the world did report feeling separated from their colleagues. But post-pandemic, it seems workers have gotten more than just used to working from home, and in some cases actually prefer that arrangement. Can you explain this shift in attitudes?
I think it would seem like the issue surrounds autonomy, or rather the lack of. such as when we had no choice but to be forced into a certain way of working. We all don't like that. So, of course, you have people who are more comfortable working in isolation versus others who view their workplace as a welcome context shift. So there are other employee needs and parameters at play we can understand, right? Such as, maybe single parents with childcare needs requiring flexibility or the home being too disruptive to work. I think it depends a lot on the kind of work function as well. So frontline versus backend, some frontline work you can't actually operate from home or have too much hybrid work. So as we actually regain our autonomy post-pandemic, actually I think expectations have shifted as well. No longer do we just we just accept whatever that, and we are used to a certain way of working. So previously offered, was the work from home or hybrid context, right, due to business continuity plans and perhaps a more focus on mental health. So I think the reversal here, right, can actually sometimes be quite confusing and potentially interpreted quite negatively. Meaning to say that, hey, have you guys, reversed your views on mental health as well?
Right. So how would you assess the evolution of touch points, given that a good proportion of companies are not allowing for more flexible work arrangements?
I think we imagine that touch points, right, to literally be face-to-face. But in reality, some of us go the whole day without seeing the majority of our colleagues unless needed, right? So we don't go to every table and have a good chat with them. So we continue communicating with our devices, email, or even teleconferencing, even in the same office. Right, so this has been shown to facilitate opportunities for all employees to share ideas by taking meetings out of the often intimidating conference room settings. Right, so that's also one sort of view. So if we need to work on specific tasks together, sometimes we could suggest people to practice syncing their schedules to meet, maybe actually making more efficient use of their time. So psychologically, you could then value the time with the colleagues more instead of going through the motions, being present physically but mentally gone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's zero in on Singapore now. Many will be looking forward to this. All employers must have a process in place for workers to request flexible work arrangements from December onwards. When deciding which is better for us with respect to our mental well-being and effectiveness, can you outline some of the factors that we should consider?
So I think hybrid or virtual work may not actually be the solution for everyone. The value of a virtual or hybrid approach may actually depend on an employee's role and personality, current life circumstances, and work style. So we know that if our needs aren't met or we're currently or constantly preoccupied with worries or lethargy, it actually affects our mood, attention, and concentration. So, for example, people who need to make a long commute to work, if they have a lot of caregiving responsibilities with children or elderly parents, or being more introverted or extroverted, all these can impact.
Yeah, sure. Now, for employees who perhaps find that they work better from home, and there are a handful of examples, or perhaps more than a handful, but are required to return to the office, how should they manage their own work habits and mentality on a personal level in order to ensure that they are efficient, but also to manage the stress of having to be around colleagues physically again?
I think broadly speaking, if the matter is indeed about autonomy for some people, to consider, how you can shape or amend your own work style at the office. So maybe, example, you can look for some private spaces, some corners, and consider asking for flexibility and support at the office. I would say, don't be shy. There are many people who decide to keep it down and not share too much about their problems because, they're worried about how they might be viewed. But it actually builds resentment, hiding, shame, inauthenticity. So, more specifically, right? Of course, this is all very personal, but give yourself the agency to select from options, right? If it's present. So keep communicating with the superiors and reportees. This actually builds more awareness of needs, right? We can also be aware of the current workplace policies better on returning to work and how you can utilize your employee benefits better so you can still attend to your needs. We could also build better work boundaries. So, for example, no contact after work hours. Those things can actually help people feel like they can take back a little bit. And maybe if it's ultimately really a deal breaker, right, to know that you're not tied to the job, people actually have decided to shift jobs so that they can achieve a better work-life balance. And actually, this is about regaining some of the autonomy as well.
All right, so regaining some agency and perhaps being more of yourself, not being afraid to set boundaries. Dr. Shawn, thank you so much for sharing your insights this morning.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Shawn Ee, clinical psychologist and psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and also the director of the psychology practice. Stay ahead with Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.